Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another book review. And imagine sitting alone at home when reality starts to slip and alter. Your lamp sprouts an eyeball on a stalk, a power cable writhes like a snake, faces bulge through the wall as if the plaster were skin. You blink, and the house blinks back. Today, I'm reviewing House of Delusion by Goo Hyunseong, an experimental indie short graphic novel that pushes horror and anxiety to the edge of what comics can do. Goo explains in an author's note that he first drafted the idea for House of Delusion in 2013. It was published by comics magazine Quang in 2016, and he was excited for this English, I'd say translation, but there's not really any translation apart from the title required. But this English edition, he was excited to see the strangeness and confusion of his book sort of published in an English edition. And it was published in 2021. And the English translation, or this English edition, was one of the first publications from Goggas, an indie comic book publisher. They're trying to publish comic books in Korean and English. And I think they only published 3 books in total. As far as I can see, they haven't published anything else. But their goal in publishing this story was to push the boundaries of comics through horror and anxiety. So consider yourself warned if that doesn't sound like your kind of thing. Goo describes himself as a comic book artist who analyzes different components of comics and disassembles them. And through his experimental comics, he aims for people to find something to relate to and think about. This is a profoundly strange and unnerving piece of work, and it will certainly give most readers something to think about. So, what exactly is House of Delusion? What type of story, if we could even call it that, can readers expect to encounter? So, it's a bit of a tricky concept to explain, but here goes. So there's a man who lives in a house. The man appears to be plagued by disturbing images and visions. Many of these images are horrific. So, images of his body turning into something else or being corrupted in some way, disturbing, shapeless and formless entities invade the house and invade his body. So, like I said at the beginning, his lamp turns into an eyeball on a tentacle. The power cable turns into a snake, and distorted, screaming faces push through the walls, and gigantic insects seem to sprout everywhere. And at one point, sort of Lovecraft type interdimensional beings appear next to him on his sofa. And it seems as if the visions become increasingly more extreme. The house becomes increasingly corrupted, and he himself seems to turn into some kind of Kafka-esque insect. And the imagery reaches a crescendo, and then there is a mirroring effect where the images return to where they were initially, but flipped like a mirror image. So, what are we to understand from the story? What is Goose saying with this experimental work? So, there are, I think, numerous ways that we can understand it. I expect every reader might have a different take, but perhaps the most obvious and the one that's hinted at by Goo himself is that he said he wanted to express delusion under fear and anxiety, and that he was inspired by staying at home alone for too long. So, in a sense, the story and the images are a depiction of one man's mental state as he succumbs to anxiety, loneliness, and depression. But the story to me also seems to be infused with a cosmic level of horror. The man appears to travel through dimensions and encounter interdimensional beings, and then comes back fundamentally changed in some way. I've been reading some Alan Moore's sort of interpretation of Lovecraft stories, and it reminded me of those a little bit. There's also parts which reminded me of the Roman Polanski film Repulsion, where you see these hands pushing through the walls when this young woman has a mental breakdown. And also, the house is as much of a character as the man. In fact, it might actually be more the story of the house than the story of the man. So it's almost like you're visiting this haunted house, and we could see it as a haunted house story from the point of view of the house itself. But regardless of any individual interpretation, I think that reading, if that's what we call it, this book genuinely does feel like going on some kind of mind altering journey. It's like a drug almost. It gets deeper and stranger as it goes along, and then it recedes. But afterward, the world seems strange and uncanny, and the everyday seems to possess some hidden horror inside it. And so it reminded me a little bit of Charles Burns, especially in his book Black Hole. So I've got it somewhere. And there was a section in Black Hole where one of the characters is taken down into a basement. And this book had that same feeling for me as that part of Black Hole. Anyway, what about the artwork and images? What style does Goo use to bring this bizarre story to life? So the imagery here is incredible. Goo uses these black and white pencil drawings to depict this sort of descent into madness. The panels are mirrored. So in one, you'll see an image of the house as a typical house. And in the next, you'll see the same image, but it's distorted or transformed. It reminded me of things like M.C. Escher or H.R. Giger, or, like I said, Charles Burns or Lovecraft. There's a Korean short story called Tower of Ants, reminded me of as well. Even David Cronenberg movies. Overall, it's very disturbing and uncanny, very unsettling. But I think for readers that are open to it, it's a mind blowing experience. It's interesting to note that where this came from. So Goo said that that he had this idea had been with him for years, and before writing this book, he'd been active in this indie magazine called Quang, the sort of indie magazine scene, and he was editing and designing and experimenting these short comics and magazines. So the sort of the essence here, the DNA here is very much the sort of small press, playful work that he's kind of sharpened into a more singular work. Anyway, very, very effective. Sorry, dropped my pen. Very effective. These mirrored layouts and the sort of falling apart nature of it, they're kind of enact anxiety. And the sort of formal design of it, these sort of flipped images really genuinely make you feel destabilized and uneasy. I love this idea of the house as a protagonist. There was a book published not so long ago, and the story was told from the point of view of the corner of a living room. I think it was a German book. I never read it. But anyway, treats he sort of treats this living space like a living organism. The book, we every all of these everyday objects, lamps and wires and things, they're turned into potential sources of threatening danger, or perhaps they're witnesses to something that's happening. And also, it's very short. It's just 44 pages. It's like a morsel of a story, a very potent short film, or something like that. And just extremely strange. If this isn't your thing, right? If you're not into body horror or disturbing insect imagery or surreal distortion, then this isn't for you. There's nothing sort of realistic, gory, or anything like that. But the atmosphere is oppressively uncanny, so you'll know if that sounds like your thing or not. But anyway, if you're curious about experimental comics, I've heard people compare it to Junji Ito. I've never read any Junji Ito, though, but I'd quite like to after hearing these comparisons. Or if you are a fan of like Charles Burns and these type of things, then you should definitely check this out. And you can get it on the Goggas website and various other places online. But anyway, it's a very enjoyable nightmare about how anxiety rewires your mind. And it's also a very smart showcase for what comics can do. Mirroring and rhythm and page design and all these kind of things. So anyway, if you've read House of Delusion, let me know. How did you interpret the story? And as always, hit the like button and subscribe. I'm Barry Welsh. This was Soul Book Club. Take care, and I'll see you back here in the next review. Thanks for watching.